I'm going to go ahead and start the recording. Jesse, next slide, please. There you go. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. As a reminder, and as indicated in the registration for this gathering, by attending this Zoom webinar, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded, and it may be used for future UAGC presentations. Now, we know you have many choices when choosing your professional development, and there are many opportunities here at the University of Arizona Global Campus. So thank you. Thank you for choosing us, Ed Talks, brought to you by the Department of Education and Liberal Arts here at UAGC. I'm Jackie Kiger. I'm going to be your host for today, and I appreciate you being here. This will be our fourth presentation for 2022, focusing on the power of one, empowering our students, which provides a foundation in our approach to instruction by getting to know our students, meeting them where they are in their UAGC educational journey, and providing continued support for them. Our focus today will be on the topic of coaching the marathon in the online classroom. Now, here to help us explore and extend this idea of coaching the marathon with her story is our own Dr. Jesse Upshaw. Now, as you listen to her story, you might listen for your call to action as you consider the power of one and how you can best support your students as a coach. Jesse, thank you for coming on camera. Would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone.
I'd like to take a moment and formally remind you or reintroduce you to Dr. Upshaw, as she certainly is no stranger to Ed Talks. She chairs the Professional Development Committee that Ed Talks is based out of. Jesse is a lead faculty for the Master of Arts in Special Education. She's worked in the field of developmental disabilities, behavior analysis, and education for more than 22 years. Originally from Wisconsin, Jesse earned her PhD from the University of North Texas, makes her home in Texas. She served as a therapist, treatment center program coordinator, staff trainer, associate consultant, a board certified behavior analyst, and special education teacher. In addition to special education, student and family advocacy, and higher education instruction, Dr. Upshaw specializes in intervention, research, and leadership advocacy for students with autism spectrum disorders, their families, and their educators. Now, what you may not know about Jesse, in the way of a fun fact, is that she is a diehard fan of singer-songwriter Jimmy Buffett, and just this month attended yet another concert of his. So, as the son of a sailor, you may have to Google that, please join me in welcoming Dr. Jesse Upshaw. Jesse, thank you for being here. Next slide, please. I'm going to ask now that we remove our videos. There we go. Now, as a reminder, Ed Talks are fashioned after TED Talks, the ever popular way of sharing personal stories for only 18 minutes of monologue. We do this because we want to hear your stories, and we can best do that by sharing our stories. Our goal here is not necessarily to teach you anything new, as you're already an expert in your field. Our goal is to perhaps motivate you to try something new in your approach to helping your students succeed. Our storytelling approach is geared to not take a lot of your time, but rather to simply set the stage for an interactive conversation and perhaps encourage you to further consider the power of one and your role in it. At the end of our Ed Talk, we look forward to learning your story of what you're doing or will do in your approach to coaching the marathon. Next slide, please. But for now, please hold your chat comments to the end, as I do not want you to miss a single word. And with that, Jesse, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Jackie. Before we get started, let's stretch a little and think about these questions. What do your students need to complete the marathon? How can you be the coach, not the referee? What resources and methods do you use to help them over the hurdles? Now, I am not what one would call a natural athlete. My speed, agility, coordination, balance, and endurance, even as a child, would be classified as average to below average. I barely made it through the presidential fitness tests of the 1980s and 90s, for those of you that remember those. I walked over half the mile run. I fell often on the shuttle run. I could not do a single pull-up. My flexed arm hang record was probably about 3 seconds, and I never made it off the ground when trying to climb the rope hanging from the middle of the gymnasium. I had what felt like no upper body strength or endurance, with a tiny build and low muscle tone. I tried several sports in school, only to find I didn't make the team, or even though I was young, my joints were injured trying. Even the early Little League experiences where everyone made the team usually had stories of me picking dandelions in the outfield and blowing seeds around to make wishes rather than catches. As a result, I consider myself to have little natural ability nor natural motivation to be involved in big athletic endeavors. Teams saw me as a liability, and while I would leisurely swim, ride my bike, or walk around the mall with my friends, I preferred to spend my time in those formative years reading, painting, or hanging out over the pain and embarrassment of intense physical exertion. It might surprise you then to know all of this, that today my story is about running a marathon, both the literal training for a marathon and the figurative marathon training that occurs in our higher education classrooms every single day. This is also the point in the story where I give you fair warning that for someone that does not excel at sports, I will use a good sports metaphor or saying whenever possible. So here's your first one. It's not always about the win, it's about the process of reaching the finish line. I started running when I was in high school. Not on the track or cross country team, as I think we've established that I did not qualify. It was something I did for myself because I realized I needed something to add to my healthy lifestyle list as a teenager. When I started, I didn't run far and I didn't run fast, but I decided I wanted to be someone that ran for exercise. I hated every minute of it. I was out of my comfort zone. Things would come up. I would start a run and get sore or tired and just turn around early. I didn't have much to keep me accountable. I was doing it for myself, but no one was coaching me along. No one said anything if I didn't run one day. I wasn't working towards any specific outcome. Running long distances definitely seemed daunting, if not impossible. I did not have the tools or the coach to get me there. Then I decided to set a goal to run a marathon by age 30. In my early 20s, I had met some big milestones for myself by running several 3Ks and 5Ks, even a mud run with some obstacles. Then some real life obstacles would get in my way, and I would put running on the back burner again. Starting a family took running off my radar, even though so many of my friends were posting their motivating pictures of themselves running before and after having children. As 30 approached, I remembered my goal of running that marathon. What do you really need to train for a marathon and cross that finish line? I sought out mentorship, coaching, accountability, gaining the correct tools for the process. Did you know it matters what kind of shirt you wear when you're running that far? My coach helped me map out how to balance my running habits with life responsibilities, as well as guided me with a plan for consistency and skill building, working up to a goal. I found out I could run farther if I had the right tools, like wireless headphones, music, shoes, and running apparel. And now I'm in Texas, so I also found that I did better early in the morning or late at night as the heat was less intense. I could run 5 to 6 miles at a time at that point. I was getting there. I could see my goal in sight. Then it hit me. Not an idea or a revelation, but an actual car. You may not have seen that coming. I mean, clearly I didn't. As I was running one morning after dropping my preschooler off at school, I was crossing in a crosswalk and a car at the stop sign pulled out right into me on my right side. I landed on the hood and thankfully it was not high speed, but I couldn't put weight on my right side. My running plans were halted, not just for that moment, but for quite some time. I had to pause. I had to reassess, do more yoga and swimming rather than high impact exercises. No marathon by 30, maybe by 40. It might take me a little longer than I thought. After all that time trying to make this running habit and long distance goal happen, it seemed impossible. It might be at this point that you're asking yourself, what does this personal running journey have to do with our students, with our classrooms, with a higher education environment? Dr. Tony Farrell, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at UAGC, compares the educational journey to running a marathon rather than a sprint race. Let's look at the comparison. What does a marathon look like? A marathon is not just about the race itself, it is about the preparation. Building skills and gathering the tools needed to meet the benchmarks of those high expectations of distance and outcome. There are water stations along the way. Supporters are cheering along the ropes marking off the course. Some people run straight through the long race at a strong pace with no stops. Others might have to make frequent stops, run at a slower pace, stop to walk, or take the whole race in a chair or using another mobility aid. As Dr. Allison Reif reminded us in her Ed Talk, Finding Your Power to Empower, we are all carrying different experiences with us in our proverbial backpacks. Heavier backpacks can slow down even the fastest runner. Those with more practice, or for whom running seems to come more naturally, might not need coaching, at least not on the day of the race. Others, you might see a coach along the sidelines or in their ear, inspiring and communicating through the entire marathon. Some might view it as impossible when they start, just as some of our students might express or view the hurdles and setbacks on the road to their professional degree as impossible to overcome. Impossible. Just last month, our 2022 UAGC commencement speaker was Frederick Gregory, a United States Air Force pilot and colonel, military engineer, test pilot, NASA astronaut, and former NASA deputy administrator. He told us how impossible each step of his journey seemed until he completed it. Did you know it only takes about 8.5 minutes to get into orbit from launch? That, at one point, seemed impossible. We on Earth rotate the axis every 24 hours, while astronauts orbit the same distance in just 90 minutes. Once impossible, now possible. He challenged us in his address to the graduates of the class of 2022 with a call to action. Today, I will do something that I thought impossible yesterday. He asked us to say it several times, committing it to memory and inspiration, and I'm going to do the same. So say it with me out loud, wherever you're listening from today. Today, I will do something that I thought impossible yesterday. One more time. Today, I will do something that I thought impossible yesterday. Things might seem impossible for many reasons. It might be mindset. It might be personal experiences or circumstances. It might be physical health, mental health, or environmental barriers that exist. For our students, it is much the same. There are academic and non-academic barriers that they arrive with or that they might encounter while completing their degrees. Some are temporary. Others have been life-altering. Sometimes it is just a small hurdle that can be supported in a single message or Zoom call. There are times when the hurdles are one right after another. Have you received an email lately from a student where the layers of everything going wrong are in bullet points because it's not just raining, it's monsoon season? Just as in open enrollment institutions, anyone can sign up for a marathon. You might get a map of the water stations and a bib number, but they don't ask you when you sign up what hurdles you've overcome to get there, or guarantee that you will finish without running into new hurdles. Maybe they should. As a part of our culture of caring at UAGC, maybe we should. The heroes on the mega screen at that recent graduation celebration were not limited to astronauts. Thousands were on that stage. One in particular, the recipient of an honorary doctoral degree, walked up on stage with a big smile on that big screen. He also just happens to be a veteran Navy SEAL, Ashford UAGC alumnus, founder and CEO of CompSafe AI, and current UAGC board member, Ty Smith. Ty has been recognized at the university for his work. When you see him, you might see an accomplished entrepreneur, family man, and a lean, mean, stealthy machine, everything you would expect from a retired senior chief in the US Navy and veteran Navy SEAL. The best of the best within the best of the best. A group that gets very important jobs done at very high risk. He forward deployed on more than 6 missions. If you listen to his story, and I highly encourage you to do so, you will hear the immense impact on your health and resolve that there can be when your day job involves facing the loss of 50 comrades to fulfill missions. You do tarnish. You do chip. Inwardly, you can become very broken, and you carry it with you. You recognize when you need to have support to move to the next step. We will share the link to the graduation ceremony when it is available, along with this recording, so you can hear his story from his voice. But as thousands of us in that arena were listening to Ty as a board member and honorary doctoral candidate, I was an instructor listening to a student. These are our students. Dr. Ty Smith was one of our students. You have one or more Tys in your classroom right now, fighting their own battles and pushing through their own hurdles toward the finish line. We may not always know what races they are running, but we are there to support their journey. As for me, I turned 40 last week. I am still running, not very far and not very fast, and I have not finished a full marathon. As Colonel Gregory pointed out, we all have our victories. Some orbit the earth every 90 minutes. I managed to touch the tape or at least finish a few 5Ks prior to my accident. However, under coach guidance and medical care for various health conditions in the last 10 years, I have been advised to take my goal at a different pace from now on. That means that my marathon itself looks a little different too. There are 26.2 miles in a marathon. I am working up to running more efficiently and consistently. Rather than a full marathon, I am running several consecutive cumulative marathons by running a little bit every day. I'm not focused on my speed or distance, but on my goal. Now, some might say that's not a real marathon if I did not do it all at once. And don't worry, I'm not going to put one of those 26.2 stickers on my car, nor will I have a running bib to show that I did a full marathon. But to me, building up to running miles and miles over time will make all the difference in the world to my health and my life. It has taken me a different path and some time to get here, but it will improve things for my well-being and be a model for my loved ones. For my success, this is the criteria. Besides, I do have other stickers on my car celebrating joys, victories, and experiences. I'm running my marathon 3/4 of a mile at a time every single day. So every 5 to 6 weeks, I will complete that marathon and then start all over again. At UAGC, that is the duration of a course for our students. Like my early run journey, compared to classmates, students are seeking a degree for a variety of reasons and from a multitude of starting lines. Some of our students are completing their courses with the prerequisite skills to sprint to the finish, with just supporters cheering them on, listening to the feedback we give as they run right by. Others might have to pace themselves differently to complete those same milestones. For some, outrunning pandemic fatigue, health concerns, and other day-to-day non-academic barriers can feel like a marathon of its own. So think about your students. Some of them are running this marathon from a deployment in the military. Some are jumping those hurdles toward the finish line with a baby on their hip. Others are only able to run late at night after working multiple shifts. Some are carefully supporting parents as they complete their marathon or navigating through their own health differences or neurodiversity. Some have the means for the shiny new equipment, while others are running without. In her work with communication across barriers, Dr. Donna Beagle reminds us that educators wear a sacred suit. It is our responsibility to meet people where they are, rather than expect them to run up the hill to us. This is our role, our sacred suit, not the striped jersey and whistle of a line judge or a referee. Coaches meet you where you are, guiding you through the steps to reach that level of performance needed to reach your goals. A coach isn't there to say gotcha and penalize you for your mistakes. That's the role of a referee. So ask yourself, are you the coach in the classroom or are you the referee? Think about barriers of academic language, such as we heard from Dr. Ashante Aller in her Ed Talk this year. Does student written work get a red card with no return to the game? Or do you use it as a teachable moment to coach them through how to meet those high expectations of university level writing? Or as Dr. Teresa Leary Handy shared in her Ed Talk, are you using that power of connection as a coach in the classroom to reach students and build up the skills to prepare them for life after graduation? Sharing your own educational experiences, your missteps, and skills to support success and tackle those non-academic barriers. I mean, just because I got shin splints while running doesn't mean my students should. We should share what we know. As you might have deduced from my story, I have had a variety of experiences with coaches. As a child, I had good coaches and those that made me want to quit, as their methods were not considering where my strengths and needs were. When I was getting my degrees, I had strong academic coaches and referees. As a professional, I have had leaders that simply tried to manage and leaders that were true coaches. While I didn't play many sports, I grew up in a Wisconsin household that watched the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is a story for another day. But watching football coaches like Mike Tomlin and Mike Holmgren opened my eyes to the power of coaches as mentors, opened my eyes to the difference between coaching and lecturing or managing, the difference one can make. Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks posted on social media just this month about hurdles of physical and mental health that he's had over years of playing his game. He shared, moral of the story, just keep going. You never know what's waiting on the other side. Combining coaching, support, expertise, and building the skills needed, he kept his mindset on the end game. The classroom is a marathon, with students working towards the standards and skills of a degree to launch the next steps in their career. We have the power to empower our students through one post at a time, one interaction, one assignment, one course, one program, one student at a time. We are that power of one. Some students might be taking breaks and looking at their marathon a little differently. Others, like Dr. Ty, have a lot to balance in their journey. It comes down to measuring the victories in the classroom and our own coaching victories. Some of our students will leave their house to run. Others will circle the earth. What will you do next to meet your students where they are in their marathon? To watch them cross that next finish line as they walk across the stage at commencement. Back to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm so sorry you got hit by a car, and I'm so thankful that you're here with us today. I think we all have sports stories, some great, some not so great, and how that does correlate into our own educational experiences, some great, and some not so great. But what we've learned here today is that behind every positive experience, every memorable experience in sports, and especially true in education, is that there is a coach behind that positive experience. I've had the great fortune to attend graduation ceremonies here at our university, and I love seeing the precious time when faculty can spend it with students and they come together and celebrate. For me as an educator, that is what it must feel like to win the Super Bowl or the gold in the Olympics, or that must be what it feels like to be launched into space, as our own commencement speaker, Colonel Frederick Gregory, as Jesse reminded us of his words. It takes 8.5 minutes for the space shuttle to enter into orbit once we see it leave on TV. 8.5 minutes. Think about that for a second. You know what that means? That means that he was strapped into an accelerating 4.5 million pound system that went from 0 miles per hour to its orbital velocity of 17,500 miles per hour in only 8.5 minutes. I wonder how many times in those 8.5 minutes the good colonel thought to himself, today I'm doing something that I thought impossible yesterday. And I mention that because I hope you are creating memorable moments in your classroom that makes it truly feel like students are achieving what they too once thought impossible. I hope you are creating a win, a victory for your students. And as we make our way back down to earth here, I hope Jesse's story has reminded you how very important you are as that classroom coach. Anyone can be the referee. Read the rules and follow them. But to be the coach, you've got to inspire your students to be their very best. And it takes me back to these questions that Jesse has shared with us on the screen. We invite you to consider and share in the chat now, but we'd also love to hear from you. To share with us using your audio, just simply raise your hand using the hand icon on the bottom of your screen, and we'll give you the opportunity to unmute your microphone and visit with us here today based on these questions of what do your students need to complete the marathon? And how can you be the coach? How do you avoid being the referee? Or how do you find the balance? What resources and methods do you use? We'd love to hear from you.
While everyone thinks about what they want to write, Cindy, I am with you. I remember those presidential fitness tests like they were yesterday, and I dreaded them.
I see Julie. I appreciate that. She says, I think my students need to know that I'm on their team and that I am here to support them. And I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I'd be curious to know, how do you do that? Because we can all put on the same jerseys, but that doesn't make us a team until we become team-like and those support elements come in place.
Jen, I see that you've raised your hand. The microphone's yours.
I did. So when Jackie was asking about things that we do to help, what Julie said, help our students know that we're all on the same team, I've started putting an announcement about week 2 when I've collected some information about students, and I teach information literacy, so we have to choose different topics for research. And so I've started putting an announcement that's who are the people in your neighborhood? The Sesame Street song, and I found the little clip on YouTube of who are the people in your neighborhood. And I just go by first name and I list who are the students, what their degrees are, because I have students from the entire university, and then what their research projects are. And it's been really interesting to see students connecting through who are the people in their neighborhood. And I think it helps to bring us all together as a group instead of 38 different individuals.
Absolutely. And I just wonder, how that little bit of outreach in a fun way, hopefully, it's familiar to everyone. They connect right away and then want to be a part of it. So thank you, Dr. Robinson, for doing that. I see where Dorothy Black, she says, I tell my students that I don't know everything and we need each other. That's lovely. And I think it puts out there the playing field of what they can expect from you in the next 5 or 6 weeks.
Dr. Patton, I was speaking about flexibility on deadlines, to cheer them on, be there to review grades that are coming in and being supportive, just being that coach and that cheerleader along the way and being flexible, knowing that they may be taking a different pace, but still getting that goal met. Thank you for sharing that.
It's good to see you, sir. Thanks for being here. I see we're Jennifer Lloyd, real-time resources. That's absolutely right. I can remember sitting in school wondering if I'm ever going to use this algebra. And when somebody connected me to how I might use it, and I remember especially in geometry, how am I ever going to use this? Well, for those of you who know me, spent 20 years in the Coast Guard, and geometry and navigation have a lot in common. And once I saw the applicability, rapid radar plotting made perfect sense to me, but it didn't make any sense to me as I was just trying to pull it out of that geometry book. So thank you, Jennifer, for bringing to light the value of here's a real example. Here's the applicability to what we're doing.
Lots of themes of balancing time and supporting students with time allocation, allowing revisions so that they can meet those expectations. If they need another try at the flexed arm hang, give it a try again. These are some tips. Do it this way, and having those opportunities to try again, along with grace and understanding. Dr. Miller is speaking here, and supporting them with ideas for associating what they already know. And building on that so that they can extend in the classroom.
And I see where Julia's come back in here and says that she every week will offer a sign up where she provides students opportunity to Zoom with her and do some synchronous one-on-one connecting. So I appreciate that you model that for your students, Julie. Thank you.
We have an access and wellness counselor here today with us. Kimberly is emphasizing how so many students need to take breaks and address their medical issues, giving them that encouragement that isn't the end of the marathon. You'll finish when the time comes. And thank you for relating that to my story, Kimberly. I appreciate that.
I don't know how this will fit in, and I didn't exactly prepare it, but I like to think I'm very prepared, and I have fancy degrees that hang on my wall to support that. And I'm all things to all people, right? But I had a student email me who was at risk of dropping the course. And in everything I brought, she sent me an email and she thanked me. She thanked me for my kind words. And without getting into her business, she said, I've never had a man speak to me this way. Kindly, encouraging. We never know what's going to be the difference maker. So think about that when you think about what you can do for your students.
Cindy talks about the balance between having expectations and being willing to offer space and learning, giving advice and being that coach, sharing our own experiences. We've all been in the academic setting. We've all been in that student seat. So sharing it as a coach of here are some ways to really revise and elevate what you're doing to the level you want it to be. Thank you, Cindy.
I get to say I'm like Rich Patton now, and I don't often get to say that because in his notes here, he says that he offers extended deadlines and he's with no penalty. I do that too, sir. And I'm more interested in if they can get the work done and that I can hold them to the rigor that everybody else is doing it. I don't know where they start. I just know where I can help them end. And getting that homework in is how they get there. So thank you for that awareness for all of us here today, sir.
Kelly shares about the analogy here with compete and participate differently, what the power of one is all about, honoring and focusing on the skill sets and strengths that students do bring to the classroom rather than focusing on the deficits, whether they're mad mom skills or the ability to navigate multiple jobs while going to school, just getting to know our students and honoring what they're coming to the race with. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, and Kelly, Kimberly shared with us about the tremendous obstacles, and we don't know. And one of my favorite things about Allison's Ed Talk a few months ago was that we're probably not their first choice in life, but why can't we be the best choice? And that really resonated with me because we don't know. We don't know what it is that brought them here today, but they're here today, and that's all that matters.
Like what Louise is emphasizing here, having taught introductory writing and research, calling that a very big hurdle for many students, and trying to see that they are not skills that we come into the world with. These are all things that everyone has to learn and develop. And so helping students move from being that terrified student of college writing and helping them shift their perspective, that it's a process, and using flexibility. And thank you for the marathon as the metaphor. Learning to write at the level we want to write at is definitely also a marathon in and of itself. Thanks, Louise.
Yes, and we do hold them to a standard. The rubric is the referee, and I tell my students, you want to get ahead of the grading, make sure you follow the rubric. And I'll point it out to them if I see that they're not, because oftentimes, they'll get caught up in the instructions, and then they'll maybe feel a little bit buried in the format, and they won't often see that rubric, that very important rubric, until after the fact. So I try and point it out early on. This is the lens I look through, so this might as well be the lens that you write through, and let's create win-wins as a result of that.
Dana mentions a great coaching strategy during office hours when students ask a question on the fly that you don't have an answer to. It gives an opportunity to show students not just, hey, I don't always have the answer, but here is how we can go on that journey and find out how to discover those answers for things that we don't know. So it's a multi-leveled lesson and a great coaching strategy. Thanks for sharing, Dana.
See where Richard says it's the idea of the coach allowing some of the stars to be the leaders on the team. Absolutely. And hopefully that plays out on the playing field in the discussions that you have each week, with the enthusiastic players being enthusiastic and having that opportunity to shine.
Dr. Denise Maxwell shares with us here about how elements of just storytelling, sharing our own stories, not just my story, your stories as well, how it can motivate students to have that connection with similar life experiences and continuing to build that connection. And then as a coach, asking open-ended questions to give that opportunity to build insight. Thank you, Denise.
Absolutely. I appreciate everyone's comments today and participation. And as the clock is running out on us here, another sports metaphor, as you know, all good things must come to an end. Next slide, please. Please watch the chat box or on your screen for a link to the Ed Talk homepage, where this recorded Ed Talk will be archived for future viewing, along with certificates of participation. You'll also find the link to the Ed Talk homepage in today's invitation. Next slide. We want to acknowledge the work of Dr. Donna Beagle and Communications Across Barriers, as well as the members of the UAGC community for the dedication in university-wide Power of One initiative. Please mark your calendars for every third Thursday of the month, same time, same place, to continue our Ed Talks and continue the conversation. Next slide. And be sure to watch in your email for an announcement for next month's Ed Talk, where Dr. Truby Miller will bring us her story of oral culture, colloquialisms, and communication. We appreciate you joining us today, and a huge thank you again to Dr. Jesse Upshaw for sharing with us to inspire our next steps in supporting our students and each other. On behalf of the Department of Education and Liberal Arts and our chair, Dr. Denise Maxwell, we thank you for being here, and we'll see you all next month. Thank you.